Started. Hi, Colin Lennox here with EcoIslands LLC and also with PermaCyclers. And we are here to present a fun-filled and exciting webinar presentation on wetlands in a box and how you can use those wetlands to recycle water, nutrients, and other things for your agricultural grow or your cannabis grow. So, PermaCyclers, like I said, boxed wetlands or wetlands in a box. Now, natural wetlands are capable of cleaning up an enormous array of different kinds of pollutants. And if you can then synthesize those different components of a natural wetland into a box, which we have, you can cycle nature and save money in agriculture, mining, a lot of different fields. Wetlands are very diverse. They can do a lot of stuff. So moving on to slide 3. There we go. What is a PermaCycler more specifically? Like I said, it's a wetland in the box. It's patented and patents pending semi-passive water treatment system that concentrates nature's ability to naturally clean water. They are portable, scalable, and efficient, very low maintenance, and most importantly, they're durable. These things are built to last decades. And it's proven systems in science. And we've been working in the Appalachian mountain chains and starting to grow outwards, doing acid mine drainage remediation. So our job is to build wetlands, in this case in a box, and use those to clean different mine pollutants like iron, aluminum, and manganese. We're starting to move into some reductive processes like sulfur and sulfate. Also starting to look at septic systems and cleaning lakes and ponds. And of course, also working in agriculture. We have records in biological manganese oxidation up to 360 grams a cubic meter a day, and records in very low pH, or a pH of around 3, which is about stomach acid. Removal of iron using microbes that grow in our wetlands in a box. And of course, though, but what does that mean for you? If you are a grower and you have to look out over hundreds or thousands of plants and think about all the material and energy that goes into making that business model work, what would that mean to you? And talking about your bottom line, really that is the top of the order. Now we have a survey that's been included in the handout section there. And that survey then is designed to go along with the webinar. So as we talk about water, we talk about nutrients, we talk about carbon dioxide. There's different questions in those sections there. And, just kind of make some notes or just sort of look it over and, keep in the back of your head. It's like, oh, okay, well, there's one. That's a way we could save some money. And sort of keep a tally running in your head. And we can talk about that more then at the end of the presentation, because in total then, that's your ROI. These are all the different ways that a PermaCycler will save you your grow money, time, and energy. And of course, then I'd be happy to look at that information at the end of the webinar. I love to look at data. That's one of my favorite things in the world. Okay, so once again, it's it's our first modular scalable agricultural wetland. I mean, this is one of those times where we're actually using a wetland to promote agriculture. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about how it works and how it grows your bottom line. For one, big one, probably the most seemingly obvious, is that it saves you water bills. If you've got a wetland in a box that is basically functioning as a gigantic compost tea generator, you have the opportunity to take your sump water, any of your water that's coming from the plants or any kind of agricultural system, get a chance to recycle it and rerun that through the MRU in that system, and you get to use it over and over and over again. What about your dehumidifiers if you're growing inside? That water, that is distilled water, that's beautiful water. Either keep it off to the side for flush water or run it right back into your MRUs. PermaCyclers, when we are in the mining community, it's called metal removal units. But it's the same basic idea. It's a wetland in a box that cleans and cycles materials. Also, you can save on nutrients. Like I just said, the compost tea generator. If you've got a wetland, you've got an enormous amount of material that is all sorts of natural surface area. all sorts of plants. And what we've done is we use hemp and coconut coir and some other substrates and materials to be able to provide that surface area. And that surface area then becomes useful space for biofilm to grow in, on, and around. And it's that biofilm. That biofilm is the key component of any natural wetland, because the biofilm is what actually does the conversion, the cycling, the changing from one component, say ammonia or nitrite, to nitrate, which is a very useful, or well, it's not only very useful, it's an absolute requirement for plant growth, one of the biggies. And when you are using a natural wetland in a box, it allows you to fully integrate that compost tea fertilizer system in with your irrigation system, basically making this a gigantic fertigation tank, or a fertilizer and irrigation. And this becomes your reservoir for your watering, and however many hundreds, maybe thousands of gallons a day that you can use and recycle. And in semi-enclosed systems, where especially you have dehumidifier water coming back to you, you begin to then sip the actual amount of water that you need for an entire cycle. And you can cut it down significantly, 90, 95%, in some cases more, of outside water. Other things you want to think about actually where that water is coming from, but we'll talk about that more a little bit later. Of course, good friend of mine and somebody I've been working with for years, James Peoples, was one of the first ones to get and order up one of our systems. And back then, this is 2014 out in Portland, Oregon, we were building that system to cycle only nutrients and water. We were taking the sump water coming out of all the rooms, the combined sump, and recycling it over and over and over again, as well as using the dehumidifier water. So our consistency of saving water was very high. Also, thing that we didn't figure out back then though is like, oh, wait a minute, if we have a good sealed lid and we use a bubbling system to circulate and cycle air from different rooms back and forth to the wetland, it allows the PermaCycler. It allows you to produce CO2. Plants produce, through photosynthesis, produce oxygen. Wetlands break down material to its core components but require oxygen, but then they release carbon dioxide at the same time. So the two components, the wetland and that grow space, are essentially breathing for one another. And if you can set up some very basic compressors, and then the design of the PermaCycler is such that you can cool the water, dehumidify the exhaust coming off of the PermaCycler, so that what goes back into a grow room is carbon dioxide rich, it's cooled, and it's dry. So you're using those componentries to also air condition the grow room itself, saving you directly on energy costs. That's a real big one. But speaking more of the CO2 bills, what kind of CO2 do you use right now? Do you even have, do you even enrich? Do you even use enrichment of CO2 to increase the growth of whatever your crop should be? That's a big thing. It's been up and coming for a while, and just a couple ways to do that really is through natural gas, which also produces heat and high humidity, which you have to then treat for, through more HVAC and more energy. There are bottles of CO2 that can come in from outside sources. What if something disrupts your supply? They take up space, not a lot, granted, but they also, now you've got a big pressurized system in an area where people are working sometimes with heavy equipment. And there's certain dangers that you've got to be careful of. You respect the pressures that you are working at when you're working with compressed CO2. Another thing that you can use is grow bags, which are gigantic bags of compost, and you add water to them. They take up space. They don't work very quickly, and they're very rarely ever allowed to have the amount of oxygen they need to quickly off-gas that material. Why don't you just take that compost and toss it, or the plant matter from another cycle, and toss it into your PermaCyclers? That allows you then to re-break down all of that material, providing CO2. You get your nutrients back. And one of the things that I started doing here just a little while ago in my home system, the one that's been teaching me how the entire system works and allows to grow with, is that if you add vegetable scraps, heck, even eggshells. It allows you to provide for a lot of your micronutrients, and that stuff was scrap waste anyway. Provides a more robust and broader array of different kind of micronutrients that then, remember, this is your fertigation system, this is your reservoir, so that's then what is being provided under highly aerobic wetland conditions. That's the water that goes to your plants.